This is Ace from Delta 2 Alpha, and welcome to the Monks and Mavericks podcast. This episode of Monks and Mavericks podcast has been brought to you by Empower Supplements. You can find them online at impower.life. They produce Amino Pro, the world's most bioavailable source of protein. It's halal, kosher, nut-free, dairy-free, gluten-free, and vegan-friendly. But more importantly, you can feel your life, workouts, and recovery with Amino Pro and waffles. Use our code D2A10 and receive 10% off.
They call him Torreto for a few obvious reasons. He winds up working predominantly in the border regions, taking people back and forth across the border and providing private security in some of the hot zones in Mexico. And we are fortunate enough to have him on the line with us. Torreto, are you there?
Yeah, how you doing, man? It's a pleasure to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you.
Thanks for inviting me to. Thanks for inviting me in. I really appreciate the opportunity. I hope our conversation is interesting.
Well, there's a lot of misconceptions out there. There's a lot of, as we've seen, a lot of people on the internet that are having some opinions that are based on what they believe to be true. And so it's better to let's get out there and talk to a guy that's been doing it. So let's just start out. None of these folks know who you are. Who are you? What do you do? What's your background? How did we get here?
Well, I'm not going to tell you my real name, obviously, for security reasons. I was born in Baja California, Tijuana to be specific. I went to school on the American side, San Diego, California. I lived there for about 18 years until my parents decided to move up to Texas. But all this time, I've been living along the border. I've always been a creature of the border.
So how was it you got into the security field, or what kind of led you into doing that?
Well, I guess that's one of the questions that I've been asking me for a couple of years, because I'm not ex-military, I'm not ex-law enforcement, and a lot of people ask me, where did you get your training? How did you become the person that you are now working in the security field? I've been working private security for 8 years. You know, I have no real training from the military or law enforcement, but I grew up in a very hostile environment in San Diego. Back in the day, I'm talking about 94, 95, it was daily gang banging and drive-by shootings and a lot of gang violence around the area that I lived, and even school. So, you know, that environment got me very interested in true crime, the criminal justice system. Even though I don't consider myself a saint, you know, I put a lot of effort into learning anything that had to do with crime. So that's what brought me to this type of work. And about 8 years ago, I was working as a sales manager at a wireless communication company. And I just walked out the door, decided that I don't want to do this anymore. And the plan was either to go into law enforcement or private security. Actually, I was hoping for Blackwater or something like that. But a very well-known company that's been established for a couple of 100 years picked me up right away because of my bilingual skills and because of my knowledge of criminal activity on the Mexican side.
Being able to offer a little bit of that red team mindset is always useful.
Yeah.
So we can definitely hear in your voice and assume pretty easily on your background that we have English and Spanish. What other languages do you possess?
I'm 100% bilingual. Obviously, I was born in Tijuana, Mexico, so I speak the language. I'm 100%, English and Spanish, reading and writing, speaking. I do understand most of the Portuguese and Italian language. I speak a little, not a lot, but enough to understand what's going on around me. But honestly, I don't see languages as a communication barrier. My line of work, I have people from all over the world that come and visit, and I have to escort them into the Mexican side. I have people from China, from France, from Germany, and really I have no issues communicating. I'm very good at reading people.
It's surprising when you're there in person how quickly you can communicate with somebody without using the language, certain gestures, etc., based on the situation. It's awesome.
Well, yeah, that's what they say. Body language is 90% of the language, right? So
Absolutely,
if you know how to
absolutely.
apply it, yeah.
Having been in a few situations where I don't speak the language, and trying to trying to teach people or be taught, I was surprised how quick I could pick it up. But you initially feel like a dog. It's kind of fascinating. You just catch a word here or there.
Well, I don't feel that way. In my line of work, I have to be very confident, very well in communication with others, communicating with others. Um, I don't let that hold me back. I've had several situations where, I've been getting chased by members of the cartel on the Mexican side, and I got people in the back of my van that don't speak a word of English, either from China, Germany, and I mean, when it comes to danger and security, you know, there's like a silent universal language, that can speak for itself.
Isn't that the truth?
Yeah.
How have you seen the industry change from the time you got into it to the time that's present? What has evolved in those 8 years?
Well, I remember at first when I first started doing this line of work, it was like a war zone driving over into Mexico. You would drive into the Mexican side, and there would be dead bodies on the side of the street, burning buses, helicopters flying all over the place. And I actually had to have some magnetic signs printed and thrown on top of the vehicle because there were snipers on top of the buildings shooting down on potential criminals, or the other way around. Uh, so it's getting a little bit better. However, uh, there's still a present danger at all times. This state of Tamaulipas that borders Texas is probably one of the most dangerous regions in the world. Uh, a couple of months back, it was bumped up to security risk level number 4, same as Afghanistan, Iraq, and Libya. And of course, making my job more difficult because people that need to come and conduct business and visit family members, or do anything on the Mexican side, now they're scared to come over because of that security level.
Absolutely. What is it? What is it you? Oh, actually, what did the sign say that you put on top of the vehicle?
Well, it'll say the name of an American company that's operating on the Mexican side. You have to understand that labor in Mexico is pretty cheap, and a lot of companies from the U.S. go and open shops on the Mexican side, and they pay less than 10% of what they will pay in the U.S. So you have a lot of engineers, you have a lot of executives, you have a lot of specialists that come from all over the world, and they need to cross over to the Mexican side. And of course, they can't travel alone because of the dangers of being kidnapped or being stuck in the middle of a shootout. So I guess that's where my special skills come in, because I've been doing it for 8 years. I've had thousands of customers. I've had up to 50 people a day that I service. And up to now, I haven't had a single incident where I lose somebody or anybody get hurt.
That's a pretty impressive track record, but at least it's a situation where you're constantly reminded through what you see every day that it's luck isn't enough.
No, I mean it's a simple formula, a combination of things: intelligence, skill set, uh, the sources that will give you information, how to avoid certain situations, constant mobility, and really never dropping your guard. I mean, because the day that you drop your guard and you decide to go and hang out at a restaurant on the Mexican side or a bar, especially here on the border where things are really hot, that's when something's going to happen. And of course, we don't take those kind of risks.
Absolutely. Avoid the watering holes if you can.
Yeah.
I can definitely speak to some of some of the work that I've done. You'll always find a criminal element in a disco or a nightclub, whether they're targeting you or not. They may just wind up having gunfire, just doing a little desk pop or whatever, right? So best
Yeah,
to stay away if you can.
and it's definitely a good exercise going out to nightclubs or restaurants, especially at a place that you never been to before, and kind of just sit there and watch. Of course, have your fun, have your drinks, have dinner, but at the same time, play the game and just watch everybody, what they do, who they talk to, how they act, their mannerism. What are they drinking? How much money are they spending? There's a lot of things out there that'll give people away. So, that's a good way to keep you safe.
I can remember in one of the places that there was a guy. He'd always show up, and he'd always show up and he'd order a drink, right? And there'd always be a whiskey and Coke sitting in front of him.
Okay.
But the interesting thing was, the ice would melt. The guy never drank it. He'd have the drink in front of him, and he'd drink a bottle of water just to have a drink in front of him. It was interesting to see people that had that much foresight. The guy was always sober, always bought drinks, but was always sober.
Yeah.
What do you think most people are missing, or the most common misconception of the operational theater and the issues that go on in kind of Mexico, Latin America? When people go and they think it's going to be like Iraq, or they think it's going to be like this, or it's going to be like that.
Well, I mean,
what's some unique aspects of it?
what you gotta understand that in Mexico and Latin American countries, first of all, I believe there's good people out there, but at the same time, as there is good people that'll let you come into their house, ask you over for dinner, and are very friendly at you. There are also people there, very close, that are willing to hurt you, take whatever you have, either because you have more than they do and you're a foreigner and you might see them as an easy target, or just because they just want to take, whatever you have. So that's one of the biggest misconceptions. A lot of people going down to Cancun, for example, they think nothing's going to happen. If they go to Cancun, it's just a bunch of Americans having fun. Well, every time you go somewhere where there's a lot of tourism going over to that place, there's always going to be a big market for drugs, alcohol, prostitution, all the vices that everybody wants to have when they're relaxing and they want to have a good time. And that's probably one of the biggest mistakes you can make when you're traveling down to Latin America. The misconception of nothing's going to happen because we're just there to have fun.
Where could people find more information on kind of some of the threat levels and some of the ways to kind of stay safe, and what Ed from Ed's manifesto has referred to, endemics specific to Mexico, Latin America?
Well, it just happens that I run a page that's called Nigrum Ciencia, which is Black Science and Latin. And one of our biggest focuses is a study of transnational criminal organizations, in particular Latin America, and related topics. We put a lot of focus on criminal methodologies, weapons, combat, counter-kidnapping strategies, situational awareness, and anything that has to do with protection and protecting your family. And those enthusiasts, they want to learn about weapons and martial arts. It's a very broad topic that we have here on this page. But the most important thing that sets us apart from some of the other groups is that me as the administrator and owner of this page, I like to bring in people that are experts in their field. And not only experts, there's a lot of people that just want to go there and just read the articles and make a couple of comments and just go back and forth. But, we have people we have psychologists, we have award-winning journalists, we have world-class martial artists, we have engineers, we have law enforcement, military specialists, special forces, even a couple of celebrities. So if any of you are interested in learning more about what's happening in Latin America, or learning how to take off a couple of handcuffs, or, watching criminal methodologies live on video after the incident happened somewhere, you're more than welcome to join my page. It is a private group, and I keep close tabs on everybody that comes into our group because I want to make sure that we don't have any criminal element trying to take information out of our page, or trying to, cause any type of dangers to our participants or targeting.
That's excellent. We'll make sure to leave a link to that and how to get into that in the description below on the YouTube, as well as provide a link when we post this up on Facebook.
Sure.
Some having gone through that page myself, I can vouch for there's some very, very high quality people. Everyone from high level operatives of foreign governments to guys that are wind up dealing with it every day. I know one fellow in particular who's survived a kidnapping 3 times.
Yeah.
And there's like if you have questions on what happens when you're kidnapped, well, you're in luck because there's people there that have gone through that experience and are willing to talk about it.
Yeah, we have a lot of people there that bring a lot of value to this group. We have special forces operators. We got a guy that's a couple of journalists in there, which they've been on the cartel target for years. So, they're doing their part out there to keep people informed, and by doing that, they become targets themselves. Even myself, obviously, I'm not using my real name because I do post a lot of stuff against cartels and criminal activity. And as many of you heard, there's been quite a few people from social networks that want to keep others informed, and they've been targeted. They've even disappeared in the past. So,
absolutely. What having had a chance to study a lot of the different cartels and kind of their operating methods and their origin story, you said you're a fan of kind of the criminal element in true crime. Who's the group that comes to mind right away as these guys are a little bit different?
Well, let me say this: the group is the criminal group that I think is a little bit different right now compared to the other ones is the Jalisco cartel, which is a cartel that came up pretty quickly after Chapo was taken into prison, and the cartel was fractured and became factions for a while. I think they're beginning to get organized again. But the Jalisco cartel is one of the most brutal cartels I've seen out there. These guys, they have respect for nobody. They've taken out helicopters. They've killed celebrities, and they're spread all over Mexico right now. There's places in Mexico that were pretty safe a year or 2 years ago. I myself would have taken my family there. I don't take my family to Mexico anymore. But, every single spot that's not controlled by, their people, now they're there trying to take over any criminal enterprise that's illegal, whether it's prostitution, bootlegging, drug trafficking, human smuggling, fuel theft. These guys are into everything, and they want to take everything over. And they're extremely dangerous, very organized. They're growing very quickly.
You had mentioned that the region had changed. Some of the regions that were safe a year or so ago, that they suddenly have become a lot less safe. In the news right now, we're talking late November 2018, just for historical reference later on. we're starting to see things pop off in Tijuana
Yeah.
with that caravan, and there's been some questions about, okay, well, why is it that they more or less seem to take the longest route from Honduras to the United States versus just coming up the East Coast to try to come across in Texas? So there's been some questions about that, and I'd also be interested seeing how quick things changed. What makes that kind of unique, or if it is unique?
Tijuana for a long time was considered the crime capital of Mexico. It was the most dangerous city to, to go visit, even to live in there. For a couple of years, it was pretty quiet until recently. This is before the caravans. Things started picking up between cartels. There's a lot more activity in regards to turf war and criminal activity. Still, a decent place to go visit. I love Tijuana. I'm from there. Unfortunately, with a caravan, I'm still trying to figure out the reason why they made it all the way to Tijuana without being intercepted by some criminal activity. The caravan could have taken two routes. One route would have taken them, of course, to Tijuana, where they're at right now. The second route, which was the original one, was coming up to Matamoros or Reynosa, Tamaulipas, which is right across from McAllen, Texas. For some reason, which I'll explain in a couple of seconds here, their plan was to come up to Tamaulipas. It's a lot closer. It sounded like it was easier for them to get over here than to travel a lot more towards Tijuana. But as you know, a lot of these caravans, they've been getting support from somebody, getting bussed over from city to city, maybe not the whole way, but just part of the way. Rumor has it that a couple of buses from the caravan made it first into the state of Tamaulipas on their way to the Texas border, and they just disappeared. Now, why did they disappear? Well, if part of the caravan is a criminal element, which could easily be MS-13 and some other gangs coming towards the Tamaulipas, Texas border, that is something the cartel is not going to tolerate. First of all, they're not going to tolerate any other criminal element into their cities. And second of all, it's bad for business. Every single person that crosses illegally from Tamaulipas into Texas, anywhere from Brownsville to Laredo, Texas, they're going to pay anywhere from $3,000 to $5,000 per person. That's the fee to cross over. Nobody crosses over for free unless you're walking over the bridge legally. So knowing this, that caravan diverted their direction towards Tijuana, and that's where they're at right now. Now, I don't know what the cartel situation, organized crime situation is in Tijuana, but in Tamaulipas, along the Texas border, human smuggling is the number one income for the cartels, and they're not going to lose any of that business by allowing a caravan to walk up to their cities and just cross over without paying a fee. So it could be that the criminal element in Tijuana wasn't really focused on human smuggling, or maybe they didn't want to draw any negative attention to themselves, disrupting other operations, but that's exactly why they didn't show up on this side of the country.
That's quite interesting. I'm kind of getting a bit of an inside scoop as to why that happened.
Well, we were waiting for them. I was keeping track of them the whole time, obviously, because I know it was going to affect my work. And once I knew they were in Guanajuato, I was hoping they turned towards another direction, because I knew once they crossed into the state of Tamaulipas, they were going to be targeted. And you got to understand, human smuggling around the world, not only here in Latin America, targets a lot of these illegal immigrants for a lot of reasons. We're talking about forced labor, prostitution, potentially organ trafficking. for the sex industry. And they made, I guess they made the right decision not coming into the state, and they made their turn towards the Pacific.
And with your contacts in Tijuana, what can you tell us about the situation on the ground and where it was and how fastly it changed, and in what direction it changed? Pardon me.
Well, I mean, the situation changed overnight. Tijuana is one of the most visited places in the world, because San Diego has the best weather. Uh, Unfortunately, now with the caravan station there and more people showing up every day, because there's still plenty of caravans on their way down, up north. Um, it looks, and from the information that I've gotten from a lot of my friends and contacts there, is operations and businesses and the daily crossing back and forth from Tijuana to San Diego is being disrupted by the people in the caravan. There's a lot of people there within the caravan that do have a legitimate reason to want to come to the U.S. I totally understand, but there's a lot of them. I would say the majority of them that are just a bunch of people with an opportunity to try to get into the U.S. and they're not willing to wait in line to get in. And now they're trying to block the bridge, trying to put pressure on the government to let them in faster, or figure how to let them in. And that's something that we really got to think about. Not only is the U.S. going to be affected if we let a bunch of people that are not properly vetted, but Mexico is suffering the consequences right now.
Yeah, absolutely, and definitely with the current administration, it's not likely that putting that type of pressure is going to go over very well. It'll probably have the opposite effect.
Yeah.
With some of the political climate, but I'm not going to drag you into the shit show that's a political discourse.
Yeah.
I'll spare you on that.
Of course, we're not here to discuss politics. We're here to discuss other matters. But people need to know what's going on out there. I think that's very important.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
And if they can hear it from me being on the border every day, and because even though I'm in charge of several operations in this region, I still do human intelligence for several companies, and I do provide daily intel reports, especially on the situation in Tijuana right now.
Absolutely. What 3 pieces of advice could you give people that are looking to head down south? Like whether they're going out to Cancun, Acapulco, Playa del Carmen, Cabo San Lucas, they're going on a holiday, or they're just crossing the border into TJ or a place similar to do a little bit of medical tourism, get some dental work done.
There's a very popular saying in Mexico, and mostly here along the Mexican Texas border, and the saying is "No pasa nada," nothing will happen. And I always say nothing will happen until it does. So if you have that mentality that nothing's going to happen, don't come down to Mexico. But if you understand the danger that it involves, and if you have a certain level of situational awareness, and you know how to take care of yourself, by all means, if you wanna, if you have to come visit family or get something to work done or visit a friend, just take all the precautions necessary. Be ready for the trip. It's not just about getting on a plane or a bus and just going down to Mexico and, getting beer and tacos. It's a lot more complicated than that. I mean, Mexico is beautiful. I love it. And I love all the people that are there. I have a lot of family there, a lot of good friends. There's beautiful places to go, but, there's a criminal element everywhere.
Is a lot of stories that go on and of where things have gone bad involves people getting into cabs. If somebody needs to take a cab or an Uber or a Lyft, what's a way to kind of reduce some of those issues?
Well, I'm very blunt. I don't beat around the bush. When people ask me, Can I go somewhere in Mexico? Is it safe or not? I'll tell them, I'll tell them the truth. You know what? Don't go to the city. There's a lot of shootouts right now. There's a lot of kidnapping. There's a lot of criminal police activity. You might be targeted. If there's another city that you ask me about, if I think is fairly safe to go, I'll just tell you this: stay away from drugs, stay away from hookers, stay away from the nightlife, and you should be okay. In regards to using taxis and Ubers, it's always a good idea to use a driver that you know already, especially if you're staying in a particular hotel. They tend to have their own taxi drivers park out front. If you're using an Uber, make sure that they have really high ratings. And if for any reason you feel any concern or that gut feeling that I don't really like this Uber driver, just get away. Get away and call somebody else, because sometimes your subconscious is picking up something else that you're not picking up right now. So it's always better to be safe than sorry.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. If you get that bad feeling, just split. Don't question it.
Yeah.
What three books have influenced your life? And it doesn't necessarily need to be security related, or just what three books have had the biggest impact on you?
And I will say that my favorite book is 100 Years of Solitude by Gabriel Garcia Marquez, Nobel Prize 1984. It just made me a very open-minded person. It's a science fiction book, but had a lot of influence on my personality. Reading people, being personable, understanding different cultures, being open to a lot of different things. I guess the second book would be Desperados. And Desperados was my first book that I read in regards to, true crime, criminal justice, and cartel activity in Mexico. It's actually the story of Kiki Camarena and the Guadalajara cartel before they finished them because of the murder of the drug enforcement agent. And the last one, I will have to say, Old Man of the Sea by Ernest Hemingway. But I read all the time, so I'm pretty sure there's other books that have influenced me a lot, but these are my favorite ones for sure.
And just in case anyone's wondering, 100 Years of Solitude is available in several languages. I have a copy of it translated into English, as well as a copy in Spanish, so you can get that. Highly recommended.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. Sometimes people see a rather ethnic name and figure that it's not going to wind up being available for them in English, and I can assure you I have a copy.
Oh, it's been translated in every language. It's almost as popular as the Bible.
Oh, really?
Without offending anybody out there.
Fair statement. If you could go back and talk to yourself in your early 20s, what's the piece of advice you'd give?
I guess I will tell myself, stay focused, don't waste time, never stop learning, and all your dreams will come true. And I think I'm on a good streak right now in my career, and that's what I would tell myself in my 20s and my 30s. There was times when I was getting desperate, and before working in the security field, I was working as a sales manager. And one day I just walked out and I said, I can't do this anymore. What I really, really want to do is work in the security field or law enforcement. And that's what I'm doing right now. And this is my life career. I don't see myself doing anything else now.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
It seems to be a consistent, your words are a consistent theme with a lot of people I've had a chance to talk to. And the last question I'm going to ask you, because I know you're a busy man, is what quote do you find yourself reflecting on regularly? What quote did you hear at some point in your life and that you wind up hearing it over and over in your head?
When I first got this job and I had no experience in the security field, the only experience that I had coming into this kind of work was being very knowledgeable on everything that's happening in Mexico regarding, cartels and criminal activity. And I've been doing martial arts for the last 20 years. I still do. Obviously, I don't do capoeira or back flipping kicks because I'm in my 40s right now. Everything hurts. But before I started doing this job here on the border, I was pretty nervous about what I was gonna do. I knew there was people getting kidnapped, getting shot, and being targeted all the time on the Mexican side. So there is something that I tell myself all the time. There's a quote that I have, and I always tell people when they ask me, people ask me, "Aren't you scared of what you do?" And I say, "Yes, I am scared of what I do, but I'm more scared of poverty and ignorance than might happen to me over there."